Welcome to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio. We're so glad you joined us. My name is J. Darren Gross. I'm a real estate investor and a commercial property insurance broker. And since my first real estate deal back in 1997, I have constantly been looking for more information about real estate investing for both my own investments and so that I could better help my clients. The result of these efforts have led to this, Commercial Real Estate Pro Network and CREPN Radio. We're building a network of professionals where we can have and share in a conversation with experts on topics of interest to investors and professionals dealing in commercial real estate. Bottom line is my goal is to help and inform. You can find us on the search engine in your computer there. You can go Google Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. You'll find we've got a Facebook page. We've got a YouTube page. We've got a LinkedIn group. If you're on LinkedIn, I invite you to go ask to join the group. There's a lot of great information that's being shared in the group, a lot of real estate professionals, and a lot of great topics going on there. We've also got a Twitter handle at CRE Pro Network, and just last week, I'm proud to say we're live with our old school website, going old school, commercialrealestateProNetwork.com. How you can help, if you like what you hear, if you like what we're talking about, the social media way to show us is to comment, like, share, follow, let your network know about us, and spread the good word. All right. Now that you know a little bit about us, it's time to set up today's program. Today we're going to talk a little bit about low-income housing and the concept and versus reality. And before I introduce our guest here, I want to let you know I was doing a little research here this weekend, and I thought it was interesting. I typed in the Google machine, I typed in affordable housing, excuse me, and the first thing that popped up was the creator of Star Wars, George Lucas's name. And turns out it looks like George has a 52-acre parcel down in Marin County. And apparently when he bought it originally, he had planned on expanding his studios. That idea fell apart, and he looked at donating it or having affordable housing built on it. And the neighbors were adamantly opposed for various reasons. And so the funding for that project fell apart. Well, the news on Friday was that George is going to step up and he's going to fund the project himself. And I think the numbers on it, I don't remember exactly, but I want to say it was about 220 units, $120 million. And you could bet that the same people that were up in arms before are still just as excited as they were before. So that's kind of a little bit of a framework of the affordable housing topic and how it plays out in some of the press. So today, I'm just giddy with excitement. We've got our guest today is somebody I've known for over 30 years. I knew him as a student, and I couldn't be more excited to connect with him today as a professional. And a little bit about our guest today. Our guest is Randy Rhoads. He's an architect with more than 28 years of experience in the design of residential, commercial retail, educational, and governmental institutional projects. Randy is a vice president at McCormack Baron Salazar, where his main responsibility is to guide the physical plan from initial master plan, conception through construction, in order to guarantee a solution of high-functioning, high-quality, well-designed, safe, connected community. Randy's been involved in a number of projects, and I won't read the whole list. We'd be here all day, but I did want to point out there's a couple that I saw that I wanted to let you know about. He was the lead architect on 6 North in St. Louis. This was the first multifamily mixed-income building in the U.S. to incorporate universal design features into every unit, and he was the lead architect on that. And also Tremont Pointe in Cleveland, Ohio, which was one of the first affordable housing developments to be awarded the Green Communities Criteria certification. He's also the lead on University Place Homes in Memphis, Tennessee, where they achieved LEED home certification. And he's involved in a number of other projects, Memphis, Tennessee. Let's see, I'm right down the list here. Memphis, Tennessee, St. Louis, Durham, North Carolina, San Francisco, San Antonio, Pittsburgh, PA. He's a busy man, and we're glad to have him. And last but not least, I don't want to forget, he's a Wildcat from Kansas State University. I'm glad to welcome, happy to have Randy Rhoads. Randy, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks, Darren.
Hey, so good to hear your voice, buddy. I appreciate you taking some time out today. It sounds like you probably keep a bag packed based on your travel schedule.
Yep, getting ready to go to Pittsburgh. Got a 6 o'clock flight tomorrow morning, so that'll be about a 3:30 wake-up call.
Oh, wow. Well, those are fun times, and wish you well, happy, safe travels there. But so, Randy, again, thanks for joining us. And I wanted to, before we jump in, your list of projects you've been involved in is voluminous. I mean, you've clearly done a lot of work in this area. Is there one project in there that is your most the one you refer to that you really are proud of more than others for any particular reason?
Yeah, there's a couple actually. One of the very first projects I worked on for McCormack Baron was when they were a client of mine, and this is in the early 90s. This is around 93, 94. It was a project here in St. Louis, and that's where our headquarters is. And I'm actually looking out the window of my office right now at this development that I'm going to mention. It's called Murphy Park. And Murphy Park, the site originally was called Vaughn Towers, and it was a public housing site here in St. Louis. And it had 5 high-rise concrete public housing towers where all the streets just went around the outside edges. Nothing went through the site. And it was a real notorious, dangerous place, similar to Cabrini Green in Chicago. And it was just a terrible, dangerous place. And our approach to what we were going to do there was to reconnect this site to the rest of the city, tear down the old defunct public housing. 4 of the 5 towers were completely empty. All the windows were broke out. People have been stealing the plumbing. There was, you go up to the site and 10 o'clock in the morning, there were guys sitting around a smoking ash barrel drinking 40 ounces and dogs walking down the street with their rib cages exposed 6 blocks from City Hall. It was just a terrible, terrible situation. Very first meeting I had at this site was with the woman that ran the daycare center that was still active in the bottom of one of the remaining occupied towers. And she was about 15 minutes late coming to the meeting because she was identifying a body that was left in the back of an abandoned car right in front of the public school. And I told her,
wow.
Need to reschedule? Do we need to set this up for another day? She's like, no, this is important. Let's get this going. So this project that we ended up doing there tore down all that public housing, put 2 and 3 story townhomes and garden buildings in place that addressed the street, built neighborhood parks, ended up later building an elderly apartment building there. We did 3 phases of development. Over 30 acres of North St. Louis is transformed. And that first phase became the example for how people were going to go about doing mixed income, affordable housing using public funds, HUD funds, federal government funds, and others. So it became known as Vaughn Demonstration Program, and it was a demonstration for how to go onto a public housing site, redesign it, and come up with a mixed income neighborhood that was absolutely connected back to the city. It was no longer this separate, standalone island. And so that development has been pointed at since the early 90s as one of the groundbreaking examples of how to how to go about creating a better urban neighborhood that includes a mixture of incomes. The other project was one you mentioned, 6 North. It just the things that we learned on that project with implementing universal design concepts throughout the entire building, as opposed to just the ground floor or a couple of units. It really taught us a lot about how to create a very flexible building, how to create a building that appeals to people of all abilities, and that it could be beautiful. It doesn't have to have any kind of an institutional feel. It doesn't have any kind of a special needs kind of feel. So there were some stories in the New York Times about 2 women that were 2 independent stories about these 2 different women that both, because they were able to live in this building and take care of themselves, their lives were completely transformed. One woman was reunited with her young son, who she could not take care of because she could not find a place where she could live and she could take care of him. So she was in a nursing home kind of environment. And so because she was able to actually live inside this building and get to and from and into it and use the washer and dryer because of how it was located, and use the sink because she could get her wheelchair underneath it, and all the day-to-day living things she could do on her own, and she was able to have her son move back in with her. So here this family gets to get reestablished because of this apartment building that we did. So there's just incredible stories like that come out of the developments that we do.
Well, those are heart-touching stories, and I'm sure that's rewarding to see that happen. Let me kind of back up here just a second, because you touched on a couple of things, and I think for myself and for listeners, kind of frame the affordable housing model and historical model. And I think what I heard you describe about the Murphy Park, to me kind of sounded like that picture that I'm familiar with, whether it be in a music video or some sort of a movie where there's maybe a basketball court with no net and there's trash blowing across the court and everything's kind of dark and, and there's not a lot of good happening. Is there a way that the traditional affordable housing model was structured? I mean, you mentioned no streets through it, 5-story buildings. Is that the way that the model was before?
Yeah, but public housing, when most people think about affordable housing, I think that the first thing that comes to mind for some people is public housing. And unfortunately, the basic design decisions that were historically made kind of after World War II with barrack-style buildings that were disconnected from the street, that had courtyard entries, that had either the entrances coming directly off of parking lots, so when you drove by on the street, you're just seeing the ends of the buildings. These things seem like kind of technical aspects, but what they do is when you organize, especially a large number of people in that kind of setting, and everyone's in a low income or no income kind of reality, so chances are people aren't leaving, getting up in the morning, going to a job. So now you've got people that are there at this public housing development almost all the time. They don't have resources to create other kind of activities for themselves. So the situation just feeds on itself, and so the bad urban planning decisions lead to poor living conditions. The lack of resources and lack of opportunities, or taking advantage of opportunities, leads to a further kind of circling of just negative kind of situation hopelessness, the lack of any kind of ladder out of that environment tends to feed on itself. So the public housing across the country, there's not too many examples of successful public housing developments where folks have really looked back at that and say, that was a great quality of life. So back when our company started about 40 years ago, our founder, Richard Baron, looked at just what was a reality out there and started to think that really what we need to do is figure out a way to create a mixture of incomes, create what traditionally has worked in urban neighborhoods, and that's to have different economic classes living next to each other, and so that you've got this more stable neighborhood arrangement, more type of traditional neighborhood that has proven itself over time to actually be a successful place for people to grow up. And in our developments, so we not only do the development, we also do the property management. So we always have a portion of the development that's set up for market rate rent, and some of it's got some adjusted rent based on the different programs. There's tax credits and public housing, and so there's different arrangements associated with those programs, and so there's a reduction in rent associated with those. But the apartment, the two-bedroom townhouse, is identical between the market rate and the tax credit and the public housing. There's no difference, and there's no difference in terms of access to the amenities like the pool, the community room, the computer room, all those kind of features. And we always have management on site as well as maintenance on site. So if something gets broken or there's a problem, somebody's there to address it immediately. So because what we're developing is a market rate development that happens to have affordable component to it, we've got a market rate standard that we're developing to, and then we're managing to. And so we just find that to be a much more healthy, vibrant, successful model than the traditional public housing model.
The diversity of the neighborhood, I think that can only make for a rich experience, as opposed to, like you said, no jobs or very very few with jobs kind of thing. Let me ask you a question here, because I think this is, and you're kind of talking a little bit about this, but I want to make sure I understand. The affordable housing, I mean, is there a range? I mean, you mentioned tax credits, public assistance. Is there a range? I mean, is there a range of definition on how people fit into or how people can fit into an affordable housing? I mean, I think historically it's always been those who have no means, but does it also ladder up to people with less than market means? Is that how?
Yes. No, you got it. You got it. So the income limit for being able to qualify for a tax credit apartment is that you can make up to 60% of area median income. So wherever you're at in the country, there's some area median income for that city or that zip code or that area. And so what we look at is people will bring in their information, and for our developments, we always do a background check, a credit check, police record check, and all those things. So there's some people that just, unfortunately aren't going to pass that level of scrutiny. So unfortunately wouldn't be able to qualify for an apartment. For public housing, that limit is up of area median income. So if a person makes more than 80%, they wouldn't be able to qualify for a public housing apartment. Again, there is no difference between the tax credit apartment or the public housing apartment or the market rate apartment. This is purely a financing tool, because there's subsidy that flows back to McCormack Baron through these different programs. So that's how we make this financially work, because the rent that we're getting for a market rate apartment, let's say it's $800 a month. So for the tax credit, it might be $600, and for the public housing, it could be $650 or something. So there's a difference there, and so some of that difference is made up in the subsidy that we would get through the different programs, whether that's through the state or through the federal government.
Got it.
And just a word on tax credits. The way the tax credits work, each state gets a tax credit allocation. Like, for instance, Missouri typically gets around $10 million a year of tax credits that they have. And then developers put proposals together, and it's a very competitive kind of process that you have to show that you've got a great development that's ready to go, that these tax credits can get utilized immediately, and new housing can get built. In the state of Missouri, the Missouri Housing Development Corporation is a state arm that is the entity that administers and gives these tax credits out. So each year we're putting developments in to Missouri and other states where we're looking to do developments in hope that we get those tax credits, because then what happens is we get awarded, let's say, $2 million or $1 million in tax credits. That means we can go sell those to a large corporation typically, and they're able to buy those credits. They're able to buy $1's worth of credits for something less than $1. So let's say it's 85 cents or something. So they're able to pay $1 in taxes, but it's only costing them 85 cents. But that's how we raise equity. So then that equity, those dollars, become part of the financial toolbox to actually execute the project.
So the tax credits are essentially marketable to those, so you can raise equity to do the project.
Yes.
Is what I'm hearing.
Yes. Gotcha. And I'm an architect, so I'm like way out of my field in talking about financing techniques and tools.
Yeah.
I just exhausted what I know about that.
Yeah. Back to the table here. So I think we've talked a little bit about the range and the eligibility kind of thing, and I think where I'd like to go next is kind of if you could describe a little bit what a situation looks like. You mentioned that it's a competitive place. Would it be a city that opens this up, a county, a state? I mean, who's going to be the one that's going to say we've got a need and I mean, is it private? I mean, like I said, I read that little thing about George Lucas. I mean, with his efforts to go after a affordable housing kind of a concept.
Yeah, it could be private. Most of the time, it's a city or it's a public housing authority that will put out a request for proposal, and they'll have a specific project in mind, and they'll generally describe that, and then we'll respond to that with our qualifications. Sometimes they're asking you to actually give them some framework of a concept, but most of the time it's straight qualifications based. So we would say, here's all the examples of similar type of developments that we've done in the past, and we would put a package together that talks about our team and everyone's experience. And the thing that really sets us apart is that we not only have the development expertise, but we also have the financing expertise in terms of how to pull these different resources together. And then we have the property management expertise. And we also have a organization that we do a lot of work with called Urban Strategies that connects our residents to the services and education and healthcare issues that may already exist and probably do already exist in these different cities that we go to work in, but they just might not be aware of it. And so through that community supportive service role, that's able to help people get access to that ladder that you were referring to a few minutes ago. So, usually it's a city. Sometimes it's a public housing authority, and yes, we've been approached by private entities to take a look at a site and help them think through the potential for a mixed income neighborhood and other kind of aspects. So I'd say most of the time, though, it's the public housing or the city requesting a proposal from us.
Got it. So in the, I guess the process, once it's realized that there's a project, there's a spot for some redevelopment or development, who all would be involved in that? I mean, is it just you and the city, or the citizens getting involved, or the schools? I mean, businesses.
Our typical development would involve a very, very large group of people. When we're looking at doing a neighborhood, coming up with a design for completely transforming a part of town, we typically do a master planning process, and that master planning process involves kind of a fancy word. It's called charrette. It's a French word, and what that means is it's a quick, intensive, focused study on a design problem. So what that turns into is about a 3 or 4 or sometimes 5-day public meeting that we go through, describing what we see as the good things about the neighborhood and the things that are the tougher, more challenging things about the neighborhood, and we ask questions about that and get feedback from the people that actually live there and work there, from the schools in the neighborhood, from the folks in the police departments and the fire departments, the teachers, the politicians. Bring in all the folks from the planning department. We talk to business leaders, talk to religious leaders, the pastors and fathers and ministers in the neighborhood. We try to get a first understanding of what are the issues, and then we spend a couple of days going through, here's some potential solutions to those issues. And as we're working through that, we ask questions about people's dreams and ambitions and desires and goals for the neighborhood. So we write all this stuff down, and we make a lot of graphic representations of those things, and we have master planners, we have architects and engineers and urban designers there in the room with us, all working through all this information. And then we also have our finance people involved in this, so we're coming up with a financeable response to these urban design problems. And so we start with looking at how do we reorganize this neighborhood into a healthy, functioning, positive, sustainable place for people to live. And so we not only look at the potential for some new housing, but we also look, where's the potential for some commercial retail? Is the public school that's in this neighborhood, is it in good shape? Usually it's not in most of the neighborhoods we're going into. What does it need? Are there physical needs there? Are there organizational needs? And so we'll be talking about what kind of systems and programs and assistance is there out there for them as well. We talk with the fire department and the police department about their access to the site and what they know about where the concerns are. What can we do to physically change things to make that no longer a problem? What's good? What can we connect to? What do we need to make sure we reinforce? So we ask all those kind of questions. We present things over the course of those days, get feedback. Are we going in the right direction? We ask questions like that. So by the last day, we actually have a set of drawings that talk about, here's the new vision, here's the approach that we've heard that address the concerns that we think get us towards answering these questions, and satisfying these goals. And so we formulate an approach there in that neighborhood. And so out of that, we typically look at how do we build that first phase of housing. We think starting with housing is the effective way to do it. If you get rid of the blight, if you get rid of the bad, in the case of if there's a public housing development there that's in terrible shape, if you remove that and you start to build back something positive and wonderful and desirable, okay, people start to look at it and say there's something dramatic changing here. The inertia is completely shifting. There's other possibilities, and we've had developments like I was describing, Murphy Park. By the time we finished the second phase, there was a for-sale developer from out in St. Louis County coming into the city to build single-family homes right across the street from our development. Absent our development, that would have never happened. We established a beachhead. We established the viability for the first time they could get comps in this neighborhood. For the first time, there was some resemblance of a neighborhood, and there was people there too. So that's the other thing. There's a lot of times with these public housing sites that they're in such bad shape, all the folks have been moved out. So it's we've seen it over and over that once we get things going, people think that there's a possibility for the first time in maybe 20, 30, or 40 years that this could be a good place, that this could be a place where people with choices would choose to rent an apartment, and it's proven itself over and over again.
Well, so you've seen the development come in. Same for commercial, or are you seeing? I would think that any kind of business needs customers. If there's people in an area, that would also promote some sort of commercial development. Are you seeing that?
Yeah,
as well?
It does. Yeah, definitely. It usually is on a neighborhood type scale as opposed to a bigger kind of commercial development effort. But yes, neighborhood commercial definitely follows after we get a phase or two developed. And typically, most of our developments are somewhere around 3 phases, because with all those different public funds and different tools that I described earlier, there's just practical limits about how much you can get in a given year. And so usually when we do a phase of development, it's somewhere around 100, 120 apartment units that we're able to finance and get built. So if we're going to do 3 phases, so you're going to be somewhere 300, 350 apartment units when you're done with 3 phases of development, and that's going to transform an incredible section of whatever city you're working in.
Yeah. What timeline-wise? I'm kind of curious. From the you've been invited in, you've presented, you've been awarded. You're having the, how do you say it? The charrette. Charrette.
Yeah.
You have the charrette to people are moving in. What kind of how fast do the wheels turn on?
Yeah, probably if everything's going great and it's just going fast, we're able to get that first tax credit award. It's probably 4 years, 3 to 4 years would be a really quick time frame. But we've done that. We've gone from a condition where you start talking to somebody in City Hall about this development that you want to do, and they're looking at you like, you really want to go to that neighborhood? Are you sure you know what you're talking about? And you're back there talking to them 2.5, 3 years later about the second phase, and they've got a very different look on their face. You're like, of course, yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go. What we do creates a lot of believers, and because there's a lot of people that are very skeptical that this is going to work out. There's a lot of people all over the country that say low-income people right next door to market rate people. It just will never work. I've had people tell me that in different cities all over the country. I've had them tell me, yeah, Randy, I know. You think this works in St. Louis or Kansas City or Cleveland, but you've never been to fill in the blank, put the name of the city there. They say, we have a very special kind of racism here. You don't understand. We have a very special kind of classism here. You don't understand. But it's just when it's designed in a way that respects and addresses the underlying issues that the stakeholders in that community have pointed out are the driving issues, when the design of the thing responds to that, and then when it's managed in a professional, top-notch way, the landscaping looks fantastic, the buildings are always in great shape. If there's ever an issue with a resident, that issue is addressed. If that issue results in them having to leave, that's what happens. We have to maintain, a fair, reasonable, positive, safe environment. And so that's what our management company does.
Well, that's interesting on a couple of fronts there. I don't know how familiar you are with Portland, Oregon, but right through the middle of town, there's a beautiful river, and there's a whole lot of development that's come on board here in the last 10 years, and several multifamily towers have sprung up on this waterfront, and it's really a sight to behold. I mean, just as far as all the shiny new buildings and all the mass transit runs down through it, and you can either take the tram or you can take the trolley, or I think you can go down and get on the Max, whatever, But for, I don't remember when it was. I'd have to go back and look, and I don't want to bore you with the details, but the point that I wanted to make is that from the seed of this development, there was always this notion of some sort of affordable housing. And again, I'm not on the inner workings or any of this, just kind of a guy reading the paper and stuff, but each time the topic gets brought up, it appears as though there's like, well, we might put it over here as opposed to in this spot kind of thing. And I think there's a commitment to it, but there's not a break ground on it kind of a commitment. There's a recognized need, but it's not a let's go put it right here kind of thing. But anyway, I digress there. Let's talk a little bit about what is, or do you run into some of the perceptions or the and throughout the planning and et cetera, some of the pushback. I mean, sometimes you get into these conversations and you mentioned the mixing income in a neighborhood and there's a notion of it's a handout as opposed to a hand up. Is there anything along those lines you can speak to? I mean,
sure. Yeah, there's just about everywhere we go, there's concerns that this is just whatever we're talking about, no matter what kind of beautiful pictures we're going to show or what kind of story we're telling people, that all we're going to do is just build some new public housing, and that new public housing will turn terrible quickly. And it'll bring down property values, and it'll create crime, and it'll just be a big, terrible situation. Well, we hope that through being able to point back at 40 years of work and show mixed income neighborhoods that are 30 years old and the quality condition of those due to, like I said, first of all, the high quality of the design. Secondly, the high quality of the management. Third, the very effective connection of the residents to community supportive service, that these neighborhoods are actually thriving as opposed to decaying. So if folks in these new cities that we're talking to are at least open to accepting those facts, we start to kind of help them see that there's another way, and there is another reality, and we've succeeded in making that happen all across the country, and we've succeeded over time. And so the whole issue of the handout versus a hand up, we think that what we're doing is absolutely providing a hand up in our developments, as opposed to public housing. In public housing, if you go out, get some education, or get a job that increases your salary, there's a potential and there's the reality that you will make too much income to live in that public housing development anymore. In our development, if you increase your salary and your income, it just might mean that your rent's going to get adjusted. It's not going to mean that you have to move out. You no longer can live in this place where you got kids. That's not the situation in our development. So if your kids are going to school down the street, it's a convenient place for you, and you still want to live there, and you're making more money, great. So we'll just recalculate the rent structure, and it'll just be the same as you had it before in terms of just your day-to-day lifestyle. So the fact that when you look at folks that move into our developments that are coming from public housing, and you look at all their life statistics, like asthma rates go down dramatically because we're using very healthy materials in our developments. We're concerned about clean air inside our apartments, so we're using high efficiency air conditioning and heating, and it has filters on it, and we're using surfaces inside our buildings that don't collect dust. Like, we don't do carpets anymore. We used to always have carpets in all the bedrooms, but we've just found that those carpets tend to hold moisture, hold dust, so that starts to lead to other issues for people that are sensitive to that. And if they're not sensitive to it, some people develop asthma-like sensitivities and other issues over time being exposed to things. So we're looking to create environments where people are able to move up the ladder, not only economically, but with their health, with their education, with their social and their standing and their own view of themselves. So we absolutely see what we do as providing an opportunity for people to create the kind of quality life that they may have not been able to create in the living environment that they were in before moving into our development.
You kind of answered. I was thinking of another question just about how to measure, the success of affordable housing and that. But the health I hadn't even considered.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. You look at children's success in school and their ability to stay in school and make it all the way through. Graduate and go on to higher education. All those statistics go up. You look at the parents' ability to keep their job and actually, like I said, move up the ladder in those employment situations. Those statistics go up. And if you look at a measurable reality is you look at the mixture of incomes in our development, it's amazing because there's people with options that are market rate renters that are choosing to move into our developments because they're conveniently located. Some are relatively new. They've got great amenities, and they're managed really well. So you've got the spectrum of incomes absolutely living right next door to each other. In some cases, their kids are all going to school together, and in many cases, that school is right there in the neighborhood, too. Like at Murphy Park, we helped with the Jefferson Elementary School, helped it physically get reestablished, and then helped it with its administration. We reached out, found the right folks that could help reorganize that school, and did so, and it's an incredible asset in the neighborhood now.
Yeah. The stories are remarkable and inspiring. I mean, just to hear about changing lives, and providing people a safe, desirable place to live. It's encouraging. Let me ask you, just as we've got a few minutes here left. I wanted to kind of touch on this. All of the work you've done how big is the need still?
It's incredible. Things, sometimes there's things that happen in our country that really point out just how dramatic the need is, even with all this work we've done. And there's a few other developers in the United States that kind of do similar kind of mixed income developments as us, but there's still like a overwhelming need. I remember a number of years ago when Katrina happened, I was actually on vacation, and my sister-in-law and her nieces were with us. We were up on Lake Michigan, in South Haven, Michigan, sitting on the beach, just having a beautiful day, and we'd gone inside to get some lunch or something, and the news was on, and they're showing these images of the hurricane and the flooding and all this devastation in New Orleans, and my little nieces from Toronto are looking at me like, and they're seeing the helplessness and these folks not being helped, and not the government being inept and not being able to do anything. They're just like, how can this be happening? These little girls are asking me, how can this be happening in the United States? They're asking me, how is it possible that all these people couldn't get out of New Orleans? I just said, a lot of these people don't have cars. A lot of these people don't have a credit card that they could go buy a plane ticket on. They can't go buy a bus ticket. And they could not believe that they couldn't put a word on it, but that just that level of poverty is a reality in this country. So when things like Katrina come up and it uncovers the fact that there's just been in New Orleans this the amount of devastation that was happening before the hurricane ever happened, it shines a little bit of a light on just how difficult life is for many, many people in our country. And I get to see it almost every day through my work, but most people don't. Most people don't understand the level of poverty that we have. And it's not just places like New Orleans. It's places like Pittsburgh. I've got a development going there where there's incredible, wonderful things happening all around Pittsburgh. But still, there's parts of Pittsburgh that haven't been touched with the renaissance of all kinds of the other wonderful things that are happening. There's places in Cleveland, there's places in East St. Louis, Illinois, that just have not been touched by all the positive things that have happened in our country over the years. These are forgotten, left behind, just disregarded locations that are disconnected and essentially left to fend for themselves. So part of our job is to reconnect these places and create neighborhoods that are neighborhoods where people with choices would say, that looks like a decent place. That looks like a great place, actually, and I'm going to choose to rent an apartment there.
Yeah, it's an incredible kind of depiction of the of the need. I was gonna mention here last night before while I was preparing for this, I got a website there for McCormack Baron Salazar, and saw there was a YouTube channel and watched a little bit of a story about Richard Barron, and maybe you could say a little bit about how he started just that kind of the international studies, recognizing the need here domestically. I thought it was pretty
yeah.
Story.
So Richard started off as a civil rights attorney, and he was representing some public housing residents here in St. Louis, so he got firsthand understanding of just the concerns, the day-to-day issues that these folks were dealing with, and this goes back to the early 70s. And so through that experience, he and his first partner, Terry McCormack, they decided, hey, we can do something about this. And so they started this company, and they started off with doing some rehabs of older buildings, and then morphed that into new construction. And Richard's vision is that we have to rebuild our urban centers essentially one neighborhood at a time. And he's put a team of folks together over the years that are just the best in the business. He's got missionary zeal, and all of us at work here have to. It is an incredible thing for us to be able to go into a neighborhood that is absolutely devastated, and then in a number of years, through incredible work from all the stakeholders and all the teams of architects, engineers, and then all the finance folks that help make all this stuff happen, with our management folks and the urban strategies folks, everybody working together, you actually create something that is vital, that is alive, and it's life-affirming, and it's giving back immediately, and it's creating something that for many of the people that live there, they've never had in their life, and that's a safe, decent, beautiful place to live, where they maybe understand for the first time that they deserve that. They deserve that kind of environment to live in and raise their kids in. They're worth that. That's a message that, unfortunately, a lot of people in our country don't get. And there's not very many people giving that message, unfortunately. But Richard, that's been his message for a better part of 40 years.
Oh, that's great. I'm just looking on the clock, and I don't want to go past our time here, but I want to just make sure. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you would have liked to have mentioned that I didn't ask?
Well, I would just say to your folks out there that are in commercial real estate that one thing, it would be smart, I think, to look in your cities, and if you see that there's these larger projects, like the current name for the HUD-financed large-scale developments is called Choice Neighborhood. So if you see a Choice Neighborhood planning effort or implementation grant being talked about, pay attention to that, because I think that you'll find that there's probably down the road going to be a great opportunity for other types of development adjacent to that. And I'd also encourage your listeners to participate in those kind of public forum, like the SHRET meetings I was talking about, because having folks that have on-the-ground experience and can help offer suggestions in those kind of settings is very, very helpful, and helps get us to a reality-based direction, because we're interested in creating an implementable plan. We're not, just interested in making people feel good and creating a nice vision. It's about the nuts and bolts reality of how do we come out of that design process, that master planning effort, with a functional, financeable, real plan forward that we can get something going in this neighborhood to turn it around. So I would just say if they see those kind of efforts underway, participate, and then look for potential opportunities for themselves and their clients adjacent to those developments. Because, for instance, the one I'm working on in Pittsburgh right now, there's a $30 million choice neighborhood grant that's attached to that. So the federal government is going to be investing $30 million in that neighborhood. So $10 million of that is going into the housing. $10 million of that is going into the neighborhood in terms of public improvement and parks and streets and other kind of aspects of that. And then another $10 million is going into the people, into the getting programs and assistance in place so that the people in that neighborhood can raise themselves up. So these are big investments that the federal government's doing, and I just think that there's a possibility, an opportunity there for folks to assist in the first place and then be part of the transformation as it moves forward.
Well, that's good advice, and just to be aware of it and to know what to look for is a big help there. That's great. Before I let you go, what's the best way if somebody was interested in contacting you or your firm about possible opportunities?
Well, I know that we've got our website that's got a ton of information on it, and that's McCormackBaron.com, and it's McCormackBaron.com, and there's a contact us link on that. Folks can contact me directly. That's fine, and I look forward to talking to anybody. And they can reach me at my email address. Is that already indicated on anything that we've got?
I've got the link there to the site.
Okay.
If our listeners, they scroll down to the bottom of the show description, there's a link for McCormackBaron.com. So that's good. So,
and if it's a question that I can't answer, I'll pass it on to somebody else here. But we're very interested in talking to folks, and if there's other opportunities out there, we'd love to take a look at it. So, Darren, just really appreciate you putting this together. This was really, really cool.
Hey, Randy, I couldn't be more grateful, and I want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy day, and wish you some safe travels tomorrow when you get up early to go to Pittsburgh. So,
thank you.
You got it. And I know our listeners will appreciate this a ton. So, and before I let you go, just hope we can do this again sometime, and let's stay in touch.
Happy to do it. It was fun. Appreciate you giving us the opportunity to talk about what we do.
You got it. All right. Well, for our listeners, I want to remind you to you can find us on the Google. You can go Google Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. Remember, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and remember, if you are on LinkedIn, go ahead and ask to join our group, Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. Don't forget, you can find us on Twitter at CRE Pro Network, and also on our new website, commercialrealestatepronetwork.com. Remember, spread the word, like, follow, share, comment. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network and CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.